All right, so this is going to be a pretty interesting interview that I've been excited for because we haven't gotten to talk for a long time. So today I'd like to welcome Leaf, who is the creator of The Last Dimension. And The Last Dimension is going to be a Webtoon original.
Yay!
Yay! So, fun fact, if you guys haven't already seen the episode, Leaf is actually a guest on the Webtoon Tea podcast. I think the last episode we ended up putting out. So be sure to check that out if you haven't already after this. So, Leaf, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. Hi, I'm Leaf. I write The Last Dimension. I love writing and creating stories in my head. And I am a very diverse artist who has done a lot of things and finally settled for art.
Yeah. And I'm excited to get into that and to get to learn a little bit more about your background. So, how and when did you get into art?
Well, that's an interesting question because when I got into art, I didn't realize I was getting into art. When I was very little, I imagined a lot of things. And the reason why I decided to learn how to draw was to give life to all the things that I imagined, to the characters I created, and to the worlds I saw in my head. That's like the basic reason why I started with art, with drawing, especially, and with expressing myself through visual media.
Mm. So, you were very into imagining things when you were young?
Yeah, I was. Every time I listen to a song, I would close my eyes, or not even close my eyes, and imagine a scene or like a small snippet into a show that I would make in my head with the characters I liked, and I would pass the time just doing that. And some in some moment I realized that I maybe perhaps wanted to give that a little bit more of a body of I wanted to solidify my ideas, and then I took a pencil and started drawing stuff.
Yeah. That's so exciting. I used to think of a lot of music videos when I was growing up listening to songs, or I'd listen to audiobooks and I'd draw all the characters as I was listening.
Yeah, I was at first a little bit obsessed with the movie, with the Disney movie Bambi. I really, really liked Bambi. And the first things I drew was when I was like 3 years old. I would draw Bambis. I'd call them Bambis. And it was just a couple of lines with sticks for legs.
Oh,
And that's my actual start to drawing.
oh my gosh, I love it. That sounds so cute.
And yeah, and then I would start drawing the for example, I loved Dumbo. I loved there were so many movies, especially The Fox and the Hound. Of
Mm.
course, these are super old movies, but my parents were into them, and so I was into them, of course. And those were the characters that I learned to draw with, and The Little Mermaid. It was I evolved a little bit. It did, they weren't sticks anymore. They had kind of a shape, and I had colored pencils. But yes, that's why I actually started. And I never stopped imagining, so I never really stopped drawing. But I drew as a tool for means instead of like finding the act of drawing on itself, the end result. I always was focused on the story or a character or a
Mm.
scene.
Yeah. That sounds really that sounds really interesting. I always love to hear from the people who not only talk about how they love drawing, but they talk about how they love storytelling or coming up
Yeah,
with worlds, and they sort of use it as a tool because I think I'm a little bit similar. But it's very
yeah,
interesting to hear that you were like that from a pretty young age.
yeah. I think that people who are like that are the ones who usually end up doing storyboards or doing comics uh, and it's very fun because most people who do this, we find a very similar origin story.
Yeah, yeah. It, it's really nice to get to meet more people who are into visual storytelling. It's definitely like its own little bubble that's kind of like it's a difficult thing to get into because you meet a lot of people who are storytellers. You meet a lot of people who work on like visuals or like the fine arts side, but it there aren't as many people out there going out and drawing their own stories, you know?
Yeah, especially because it's really hard to it's like drawing a piece of art that expresses an idea or concept on itself. It takes time, it takes effort, but you can do it on yourself, on your own. Excuse my English. You can do it on your own. But like telling a story is a task that encompasses so many other abilities, other skills that you take time to develop,
Mm.
like storytelling, or you have to study anatomy, you have to study how to do backgrounds, you have to learn how to tell a story, how to write believable dialogue, and how to lay out a page or a panel so it can read more easily or at least nicer. It's a very complex set of skills that you need to acquire, and you're usually motivated by the will of telling your own story. Not to say that if you don't have a story of your own, you can't be a comic artist. Not at all. But I find that it's people who want to tell a story the ones that more often end up in the comic industry with your own stories, with original stories.
So maybe that's something we could touch up a little bit more on because that's a really interesting topic that I've noticed too. To make a comic, you have to have a lot of different skills. Like I was very surprised how much just graphic design I've ended up having to use like my old audio editing skills to work on like my YouTube channel and stuff has just come into
Oh,
play
yeah.
that you'd never expect.
Yes. Many skills that you never expect to use again, ever. Not to mention the investigation part, because if you're writing a story, it's very likely that you won't know everything and you
Mm.
wouldn't have experienced everything. So you have to like look up certain events or situations or machines or locations. Is You have to investigate to do the research.
Why don't we shift back to you sort of talked about how a lot of Disney movies influenced you growing up. What else influenced you?
Okay, let me think. Uh, a big thing that influenced me was the popularization of anime and the Japanese culture in general. I would watch a lot of shows. I would like, especially Sakura, excuse me, Card Captor Sakura. That's the English name. And I would get home from school and watch it, and I would love the characters. And I think that one of the first anime, purely anime things I drew were Sailor Moon characters and Sakura and Card Captor Sakura characters. I really loved those shows, and the big eyes and the expressions, how the chibi would help the characters express themselves in exaggerated ways. I found that very interesting, and it was missing from a lot of Western media.
Mm.
And I found that way of expressing uh, stories and emotions very appealing, and that inspired me a lot. Also, Digimon. I love Digimon.
Oh, me
Yeah.
too.
And kind of those things, those um how do you call it, prototype ish isekai of people having adventures in different worlds and getting lost in different planets, like have you watched Planet Survival? Those kind of shows really influenced me and inspired me to set my own stories in a world that was not this one or a modified version of this one, but like a completely different planet, because it gave me the freedom
Mm.
to create a lore um, where I could do whatever I wanted. And I had no need to stick to rules or to do anything like, how do you call it? Not to do anything that was already established by some media. Because, for example, a lot of Western fantasy has the same creatures, like elves and werewolves and vampires, and it's always the same base with different flavors. And I love that in anime, the worlds that are built are not necessarily based on anything. They're unique and uh, created from scratch, and they don't have to stick to anything. And I
Mm.
found that very inspiring.
Something I'm curious about too, were you very into, because it sounds like you really enjoy creating your own worlds. You really love adventure type stories where you get to sort of like explore and learn about a new created society or world or like monsters. Are you like very into like world building?
Yes, I am. That is, I think that's my favorite part. Creating the worlds, creating the culture, the languages. I love creating languages and like imagining up grammar rules for different languages and why some are simpler and why some are more complex, and how are the verbs or the nouns of this particular culture. I really like that. I think it's very interesting and I enjoy it very much. And there are other things like creating the anatomical difference between some species and why they're there, and how does that affect the relationship of a different species with another, or how far off the worlds are. And so if they have different accents, even if they speak the same language, I really really enjoy building not only the cultures but also the physics of the world, so I can explain the phenomena, the fantastical phenomena. And I always gravitated more towards sci-fi
Mm.
because I want to explain things not strictly with physics, but I want them to sound not not insane, not crazy. I want them to make sense. It's not like there's magic because there's magic. No, look, there's magic because, for example, um, there are different planes in reality, and the fact that these planes may be close by allows some of the characteristics of this plane to permeate into our plane. And I like those explanations. They may not add anything new to the system, but I like having them as kind of a background to to create new powers from it, like to help build the world based on the small general rules that I have created for myself. Just because I find it fun, not not like I don't think of world building as something restrictive, but as something that allows me to attach more and more and more branches and functions to the world I already created. If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah. I can really feel I also really agree with I enjoy stories where there's sort of like it might not technically make sense in the actual world, but like you can really believe it, which is part of why I really enjoyed reading a lot of the like early 20th century, late 19th century like sci-fi novels, because
Oh
they
yeah.
sort of go on this like loose logic of like here's what we've discovered in science, but they haven't actually figured it out yet, but it just
Yes.
feels so real at the same time even when you know something isn't quite right.
Yes, exactly. It's very useful in a way to not know everything.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
expands their imagination.
for sure. So were there any other things that influenced you growing up that you wanted to mention?
Oh, let me think. Hmm. Well, I did a lot of things growing up. I I studied music ever since I was a little kid, and I love languages. I love languages. So I think that diving into other languages and other cultures, even if it was in an amateur way, helped me develop uh, things, or like identify things that were different from culture to culture, so I could build the world in a different and sort of believable way.
Hmm.
Just the studying and the nerdy language stuff, I think that influenced me a little bit too. But allow me to think, because I'm sure there's something else. Okay, manga and anime influenced my drawing style, mm, and languages, music influenced uh, my culture building. And physics, I was always a nerd. Regarding math and physics and stuff, that also played a big part on it. But I think for now, that's it. When I was a little bit older, I also discovered Fullmetal Alchemist, and that series is delicious to watch for the world building and for the character development. And I don't think I ever stopped getting inspired. I think I am inspired constantly by everything around me, and I try to implement, even if they're very like fairly new things. I If they give me ideas, I'll try to implement them, because I don't think inspiration was like a period and then I had a story and then I forgot everything else. I think I'm constantly building the story and the world.
Yeah, yeah, I can relate with that for sure. I've certainly been getting back into watching anime recently and getting into watching K dramas, which has been a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. That sounds fun.
When did you start feeling like you wanted to share your stories?
Hmm. That is a good question. I've always had the stories in my head. I never really had the need to share them until I discovered DeviantArt and started posting drawings of my characters and of little scenes and snippets into the story, just because I could. I had no actual realistic plans to tell it. Of course, I would have liked to back then, but I never thought it was realistic, possible, and I started a webcomic that I posted to Smack Jeeves, and it died. So I thought maybe I'm not fit for this storytelling thing. I'm not that good at it. So I just posted drawings of my characters, of little scenes, of little things that I had in my head and I wanted to let out. And the feedback from the community was also very encouraging to help me decide that perhaps I was not the only one enjoying this story. And maybe if I posted more about it, people would like it. So it was mostly the positive feedback from the art community back in the day of DeviantArt that made me decide that perhaps I could tell this story. Maybe I could tell it well enough that people would care about my characters and my world as much as I do. And I before that, I was working at what you call a 9 to 5 job. It was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
8 to 6. And it was in an animation studio. And I was a storyboard artist. And
Hmm.
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. But the studio shifted a bit the perspective, and I decided that perhaps I did not want to create storyboards for other people. I wanted to create my own storyboards and tell my own story. So I quit my job, and well, I decided to little by little tell my story, see how it went, see what I could improve, and learn, because I had learned a lot on when I was inside the industry and the pipeline, but it was more animation tailored. Yet it had so many things about storytelling that I thought I could apply, that I felt confident enough to begin sharing my my mind babies with the world. So it was a process of me becoming confident enough to tell stories. It was not like some big event that made me decide to tell it. It was just very gradual, very slow.
Wow, wow. That's amazing. Something that like I'd kind of like personally want to hear a little bit more about because well, maybe you can figure out why. I don't know. But uh I'm curious, when you quit your job, did you just go for it or did you have like a
Mm,
plan?
no, I had a plan. That is, I studied 2 careers. I started biology, and
Mm.
then in the middle of it, I shifted. I sort of quit and started graphic design. So I finished graphic design first, and then I decided to go back to finishing biology. In a way, it was like I quit biology, studied graphic design, started working on an animation studio, and I quit and decided to finish biology. I was not missing much. It was just like a year more, a year and a half more.
Mm.
So while I was finishing biology, I was posting the comic. And that was like, I didn't plan for it to become my main thing. I was like, okay, I have time. I don't have a job anymore. I just have classes. And while I have these classes, I can dedicate a little time to the comic. And that's what I did. And it turned out that after I finished biology, the the big shift in the world hit, and I was trapped at home without being able to get a biology job or a graphic design job or anything. So I was like, okay, let's just continue with this.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
comic thing is fun.
So, for people listening into the future, the big shift in the world is the year 2020, I'm guessing, right?
Yes, it is. It's just caring for for monetization. Thank you, YouTube.
So, all right. So, I think we'll end up looping back to talking more about this when we talk about the next section. So, let's move on to the next question. So, how did you first hear about Webtoon?
Oh, that was around 2018. A friend of mine likes comics a lot. She likes webcomics even more. And she was like, wow, look at this app. It's amazing. It has so many good stories. Let me download it for you. And I got the app and I read some webcomics. And I was like, wow, this looks so much fun. And she went like, yeah, and you can post your own stories. I was like, what? Really? For real? Yeah, you can do that. And I was like, okay, we can totally try this. It wouldn't hurt because I was already familiar with tapas,
Mm-hmm.
and before that, Smack Jeeves and every other platform that kind of boomed and didn't flourish. But this one seemed like it had like it knew what it was doing in a way, and
Mm-hmm.
the format was very interesting. It was vertical scrolling, so I decided to try it. It took a few tries, a few attempts to get the spacing of the panels right. I had to go back and edit a lot of things, but I had fun. I think that it was thanks to my friend that I decided to try Webtoon as is, because I found stories that were complex and colorful and unique and very fantastical, like the ones I had in my head. So I thought like, okay, we can do this. People are doing this. Why wouldn't I dare?
Yeah, yeah. So, with your comic, did you come up with it with the intention of posting it on Canvas? or were you already working on there beforehand? On it beforehand?
I I was working on it beforehand in page each format, and I plan to post it on Tapas. And I actually started posting on Tapas before, but after I saw Webtoon, I changed the formatting, and I I decided that it was a better idea to do the scroll format anyway, both for Tapas and for Webtoon. I know that Tapas already had some scroll format comics, but there were so many page by page comics that you don't really pay that much attention. You just think, okay, this comic's kind of weirdly formatted, isn't it?
Hmm.
But because most of the content on Tapas is either behind a paywall, and that's the comics they get from Korea, and nowadays the ones that they are, how do you say, I think it's partnered with. I'm not sure how the Tapa system works,
Yeah, yeah.
but
It's a little more complicated than Webtoon, I think.
yeah. But the comics that were posted by people, by Westerners mostly, were page by page, and it was like the content I had to go with. Uh, the most widely known examples, to say something. So I was like, okay, let's do it kind of like page by page But then after Webtoon, I was like, okay, no, this is better. This is more efficient in storytelling. Let's do this. And the good thing is that scroll format and storyboarding are very alike. When you when you have to lay out a page, a comic page, you have to be thinking of it as a book already. Like,
Hmm.
how do you want the reader to perceive these two pages that will be shown to them at the same time? So you have to be very careful with the layout. But with scrolling format, it's more about how do you want the pacing to go, not how do you want these two pages to go together, but how do you want the reader to perceive this scene? Do you want it slow? Do you want it fast? Do you want to feel closer to the characters? Do you want for the environment to be the central focus? And it's a lot of rules you learn on, like, for storyboarding, because storyboarding considers that you have just a screen, and the screen can only show one scene at a time. And the scrolling format is the same. You can only show one or two panels at a time. So it's very useful to think of it as if it were just the screen. So I thought, if this is easier, this is friendlier to my own reading style, maybe to other people's reading styles. Uh, so I think I branched out. I don't know what I was supposed to be answering.
I think I'm not quite sure what I asked you, but we were talking about when did you first hear? Oh, I think I asked you.
Oh, if I had posted, if I had thought about
Yeah,
posting
yeah,
it in other formats before, yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes, yes. But I decided that Webtoon format was better, basically.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk about this a little bit more in general. This like time
Okay.
period. So, what was it like to first post on Canvas?
It was very interesting because the engagement was so much better than everything I was used to on Tapas.
Hmm.
People came faster, and the comments were more, and everyone was more excited about the story. And I think the Canvas audience is very much the audience that I wanted to tell my story to. So that made me very happy and very confident to keep going. And it, at least in my experience, it has been very understanding of my breaks and very encouraging. And I have felt very welcome, and I've wanted to keep going on. not just because of me, not just because of them, but I mean, with them, I mean the audience, but because of the like both things together. The fact that I can see my story growing and people sticking to it and enjoying it so much and thinking up theories and loving side characters or background characters. There are gags with background characters of mine. People who love a character that appeared just once and in the first episode, and to this day they remember him and they draw him and he has fan art. It's really, really fun to interact with this community. So that's something that I enjoyed of Canvas a lot, the interaction.
Mm.
Um, and the way that at least at that time the audience could be built, because it was mid to late 2018.
Mhm.
So I think there was less competition in general, and the Canvas team had better luck finding new series, and so did the Canvas readers. So I think thanks to that, my series could grow in a, I think, healthy way, and I enjoyed that very much. I think that that was a great factor for me to continue posting, because if I had posted only on Tapas, the interaction just went down and down and down with every update. Instead, on Canvas, it went up, 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 and I had like 10 comments on the first episode, and then 20 in the next one, and 30, and then my average became like 50 comments. Instead of Tapas, I had like 20 comments on the first one, and then 10, and then 3, and then I'm lucky if I get one. So I know I would have gotten discouraged.
Yeah, yeah. It it's amazing how much results can change just based off of like when or where you're posting something, cuz you're posting the exact same comic but you're getting
Yes.
very different results.
Yep. It's is a little bit surprising, but not so much considering that the audiences are very different. It's tailored towards different people,
Mm.
and I think it's natural, but it's still good to find the place where people will recognize and love your story the most.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What was it like in general during your time on Canvas?
Wow, it was very good. Eh, I had I had a lot of fun. Excuse my English. What are phonemes? Phonetics are weird.
Yeah, yeah.
I I had a lot of fun. I met a lot of people, especially because I created a Discord server where
Mhm.
people who really like the series could come and build a community around that, around the characters, around the universe. So my Canvas experience was also shaped by this Discord community, and the fact that so many people would care to join and to share, and people would get happy to meet, say me. I, I don't want to like sound how do you say that, selfish or smug, but it's
Cocky.
lucky. Yes, that's it. But people were happy to meet me, and I was so happy that they were happy to meet me, and we could talk about my series, or we could talk about the things or shows that they enjoyed, and we could share a lot of things in common, and they would comment, oh my god, this episode, oh, I didn't expect this, or wow, no, insert name of character, poor thing, or this character is a cinnamon roll, or I hate this character. It
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
seeing the live reaction both in the comments on Canvas and on the Discord server. It was very dopamine releasing. It was very encouraging, and I think I think my experience in Canvas was was great. I am very thankful to the Canvas team to have picked my comic several times and publicized it and made it available and visible to so many people. I'm really, really, truly thankful. And of course, I was not being paid to produce it. So I'm also thankful to my friend or my sister and my best friend who helped me expecting no pay at all with the colors and the shadows and all of that. They're my assistants who who were like I was sort of exploiting them because I didn't earn, so I couldn't pay them. But they were also having fun. So it was a very familiar, cozy, warm, sweet feeling to be on Canvas because I didn't owe anything to anyone, but I still felt so encouraged to continue the story.
Yeah, yeah. That's so nice to have people help you out with parts of your comic. It's very sweet of them.
Yeah, like you care enough to help me tell this story? Thank you. It's ridiculous. Why? But
Yeah.
yeah, my Canvas experience was great. I know there are some things that can be sour, like the rating system or losing subs every time you upload. But that's not Canvas exclusive. That is for everyone because sometimes people just subscribe and they forget that they subscribed and they see your notification and say like, I don't really want to subscribe anymore. I'm not that interested. And then you lose subs every time you upload. And yes, there are experiences that may seem negative if you only look at the numbers, but I think that you can counter those by looking at the interactions, the comments, the reactions of people, the oh no's and the I'm not crying, it's just ninjas cutting onions comments.
Yeah, yeah. And like, I haven't actually gotten the chance to talk about this. This probably won't be coming out for a while, but uh I've been very encouraged recently by Webtoon seems to have been making an effort to like go in and slowly work on some of these issues, especially the rating system. So,
Yep.
good good. I don't know what else I was gonna say with that, but good.
Yeah, good. And the comment moderation too. I
Hmm.
think that's very hard because it's very hard for everyone to be able to read every comment on every webtoon, especially the ones that are very interactive and get a lot and pages and pages and pages of comments.
Mm.
So it's uh, it the report button I think is very slow acting. People who just leave spam links are like the least of the problems, and there are others who just outright send hurtful or inadequate comments. And yeah, and I think that's troublesome. And I've seen a lot of people struggle with those, especially in LGBTQ plus comics.
Mm.
Um, but I think Webtoon is working towards making the environment more like safer, making it friendly to all the community that they see is growing because darn it's growing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, they better do something about it, and they know it. And I think they're making an effort based only on their social media posts, but I think they care, and that's good because we care as a community.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with that. And I'm definitely glad to hear that. And I'm good and I'm glad that things seem to slowly be moving towards the right direction because it really is something that I think all creators, regardless of whether they're on Canvas or they're an original series, really care about being able to be in a nice, respectful community where we can just hang out and be cool, you know?
Yeah, chill,
Chill,
be
chill.
happy, tell our stories, and enjoy other people's stories.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, jumping back, where would you like to see the webcomic industry or community go?
Well, it's an entertainment community. I I would like it to become what it is becoming right now. It's a very diverse place with where people can share their thoughts and their stories and their worlds in their heads, where people don't feel afraid to express themselves creatively
Mm,
and to leave their opinions on stories, right? Because we circle back to the comment moderation thing. Sometimes you comment something and you get attacked, or you get distasteful comments on your comment. So sometimes people may be afraid to comment something, and I think for now Webtoon is doing a good job. What I mean, like, the best they can with what they have, because this community is growing a lot, and moderating a community that's this big is hard. But I would like this community to become unified in a way, as in we all agree that our purpose is to tell stories and to have fun reading them.
mm,
I don't know. I I like this community. I The industry, I would think that it's going to be geared towards more professionally produced content. And in the future, we may see a lot more comics produced by teams and not so many original solo creators. I think that's a very big possibility and a logical turn of events. In many content creation platforms, it's been happening, say YouTube. You see that big channels have a big team behind them. But I think that the comic community, in a way, is special, because we are like our artists and solo artists and artists who tell stories are usually us introverts.
mm,
Us I don't think that um there I don't think there's a lot of, how do you say that? I think we can mostly understand one another, and that us as artists relate to one another in the sense that we want our peers to succeed because we know how hard it is to succeed. So right now it's a booming industry with a lot of artists who understand how hard it is to do it on your own, and so try to help other solo artists to build themselves inside this community. And I would like it to continue being that way, a community that supports starting artists. I've seen this happen a lot, and I really like it. People who are starting on comics post, and then other people publicize those posts, and or even the very same Webtoon Canvas account comments on it, or like picks stories and shows them to the world. I think it is great that we can, as people, get somewhere without being anywhere first. Like, from scratch, we can start on Canvas from scratch and become big and become known and become seen. And I love that. I hope it doesn't change very soon. I know that's wishful thinking, but I would like for this community to continue supporting one another, no matter how small and no matter how experienced or inexperienced.
yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with that. That's one of my favorite things about the webtoon community in general. Just like the camaraderie. Like
Yes.
we're all trying to just jump in there and tell as much of our stories as we can and get our stories out there and share them with people. And it's a really special experience the past like year has been for me to just be a part of this.
Yes, it's really good. it it improves your mental health in a way. Like people are rooting for me, even if they didn't know me before. There are people who want me to tell this story. Amazing. You get a lot of encouragement. And I don't want that to change.
Yeah, yeah, me too. So, I think something interesting that you kind of hit upon earlier, but I don't think we quite came back to. If you want to talk about it a little bit, but like the year 2020, I think
Ugh.
was a very interesting year for the whole community.
Yep.
How
Yes, it
yeah. Yeah. So
Oh,
like, oh, oh,
no,
you.
yes, you, please. You.
So, how do you feel like the community was changed or impacted, or I don't know about that because you joined before 2020. I joined during 2020.
Okay, so I think 2020 was a boom for the entertainment community because people were trapped and had to turn to online resources to find both education and entertainment. And the webcomic community boomed.
Hmm.
I think I don't remember when FastPass was implemented. Do you?
I
That
th- I think it was relatively recently in the grand scheme of things, but I don't
yeah.
remember.
Okay, but that like coupled with the 2020 thing, I think that helped the community grow a lot, especially because not only users and readers and audiences were looking for content to consume, to pass the time, to not lose their minds, but also uh let's call them closeted artists, people who already thought they had like their life figured out, and then the pandemic hit and they said like, okay, I like telling stories, or I like drawing, or I like doing this or that that I hadn't really spent time on, but now I have 4 hours that I'm not going to be commuting that I can use to produce art. And a lot of I don't say, I don't know. Uh, a lot of people decided to turn into creating comics and creating art as an escape from the situation.
Hmm.
And I think we saw a great deal of growth just because of that. A lot of new artists or artists returning to art that had quit like years before, and then, whoop, okay, I have a chance, I can go back. And I kind of can try my hand at this new thing that's called a Webtoon. And I think we saw a lot of growth in artists that were already established because they had more time to dedicate to webtoon, to their stories, to their webtoons.
Hmm.
Not not only like new artists or artists coming back, but the ones that were already building a story or producing a webtoon also had more time to dedicate to it. The sole fact that you don't go out as much impacts the time you have available and the the way you decide to schedule your things. And if you can spend more time doing art related things, the better you get. For example, I myself, I've been drawing for a long time, but I didn't improve as much as I did in 2020 because I actually started like studying art, studying anatomy, studying gesture drawing, or like volumes, or little things about perspective, or color. I had more time to study these things. So I think I improved more on 2020 than I did in like the 5 years prior.
Yeah, yeah. Me too. I also improved a lot in 2020. But I've been noticing too from your social media. I think your art's been improving recently a lot too.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet of you. Thank you.
No
I'm
problem. It's
happy.
really exciting to see.
Well, I've been trying, especially because after I I went into this hiatus, I was like spending a lot of time writing.
Mm.
And while I was writing, I also needed to draw. I breathe when I draw, and if I don't draw, I don't breathe. So I've been drawing a lot of things, and not like full drawings or completed things, but the little things I do, I can spend more time um on them just because I don't have to produce a 100 panel episode every 2 weeks.
Mm.
So I think that may be the reason why I have improved recently. Thank you.
No problem. We kind of already touched about this, but what do you enjoy about Webtoon?
Wow. Okay. About Webtoon, I enjoy the format. I enjoy how easy it is to read stories, to engage in them, on them, to engage on them. uh, and the fact that I can read it on the go has been a huge plus to me, for me, because whenever I follow like page by page comics, I usually don't read them for months and
Mm.
then I binge them, right? Because it's so slow that I read a page and then when the next page is posted, I often forget what the last page was and what the whole context is. On Webtoon, the um it it's way faster and there's more content to it. I understand that most webtoons don't have the same production quality, to say something, uh, that a page by page comic may have because it is again thought to be printed. But for that very reason, their stories are, in my opinion, more easily digestible and
Mm-hmm.
easy to follow. Also, the font size is bigger, which I also appreciate. And the action is usually faster and easier to follow. And I really enjoy that. That makes stories uh for me much more appealing, and I get hooked so easily with webtoons. That's one thing that I enjoy as a reader. Now, as an author, I enjoy how how the layout works because I can think up the way panels work more intuitively, and it becomes less of a task of thinking, okay, how will this look printed?
Mm.
And more like, how do I want the reader to take in this scene? And that is, to me, a way more interesting approach because I'm more interested in the story, less interested in the technicalities of it being printed or not. um, I also like the community. Usually, it's younger than in many other parts of the internet, so you will get both more excited comments and um, perhaps some out of place comments. But the fact that people engage with your characters and your story is very very enjoyable to me. I think I've said that so many times. And about Webtoon, I enjoy the new features they've been implementing, like you being able to upload your own thumbnail.
Mm.
I like also, oh, I had an idea and I forgot. Oh, I also like the fact that you can schedule your posts and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to like wait for the time you want to post and anxiously wait for the clock to turn and just immediately click on submit or on publish. So I like that they have been changing things, improving things for Canvas artists, and being aware of the community and the growth in general.
Mm. So the next question I've kind of been excited to hear about. So, what was it like when you found out that you were going to be an original creator?
I acquired selective mutism for like a day. Yeah, it was very exciting. I didn't believe it at first. I didn't believe it. I was like, okay, they got the wrong person. They didn't mean it. This can't be happening. And then, I mean, it was also my dream, as I think it is to many people who are now posting on Canvas,
Mm-hmm.
to be noticed by senpai. But it was very, very exciting. It was a long process, but it was very, very exciting throughout all of it. And it's hard to describe because it was exhilarating, exhilarating,
Yeah,
blissful. I cannot give more details, but it was fantastic. Just so you know.
yeah. Well, that was great to hear anyway, because it made me happy knowing how happy you were. You know?
Yeah. But honestly, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, yeah.
I was an experience, a dream come true. The culmination of all my efforts throughout the past 2 years, and the payoff of not being able to get a biology job, and and to have decided to tell this story. It was very satisfying, and it made me feel like I had not wasted my time. That I, despite thinking I had failed so many times and that there were so many mistakes I could see and so many things that I could improve, it made me feel like it was all worth it. That I could always grow some more. That no matter the level you start at, it always will help you become better. And that sometimes, no, wait, and that someday that improvement, if your passion is strong enough, may lead to to whatever it is you call success.
Mm,
Because there are people who would enjoy or who do enjoy only posting on Canvas and never becoming an original, and that's not their goal and that's not their dream. But to me, it was my dream, and in a way it was my goal, even though I did not know the steps I had to take to get there. I just kept on going and persevering and trying to learn from my mistakes.
mm.
So it felt like it was worth it.
Yeah. Wow. That was so inspiring. I was just like, oh. But I have one more follow-up question to
Yes.
that. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, I don't know if motivation is the right word, but before you became an original, you were working on your comic for quite a
Few
bit.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple years, and you posted very, very long episodes. So,
Okay.
yeah.
My motivation to keep doing that, even if I was not going uh, anywhere, like, how do you say that? The fuel that kept me going was mostly internal, Mostly, I wanted to tell my story, but also the engagement that I was receiving from the community, from the Discord server, from the comments on the uh, on the episodes, and from the growth of subscribers or readers on the app. That was also encouraging because I could feel like I was not wasting my time, that I
Hmm.
was telling a story and people were reading it. So that also helped me keep going, even though it's people often say I make this story for myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I I already made this story for myself. If I were going to this story is already in my head. I'm not telling it to the world solely for myself. I want it to be read. I want it to be consumed. I want people to feel something and to get excited or scared or happy when something in the story happens. And that also motivates me. And maybe if I had stopped getting comments or stopped getting engagement, I would have thought, okay, nobody's interested in this. And perhaps I would have tried with another story, or maybe I would have given up. I wouldn't know.
Mm.
That's a hypothetical question, but my motivation came from my audience encouraging me and from my own desire to tell this story that I know so well, that I hold so dearly in my heart. I think it's a mixture, an amalgam of both things. And as for other people, if your how to say if your desire to tell this story is great enough, powerful enough to fuel you through the whole process, amazing. If you have other um, goals, like you want this comic to become part of your portfolio, to go work somewhere else, or to go work on companies that specialize in comics, then that's your motivation. If you have a motivation to, for example, mm, find you love telling stories but you don't have a story and you're just trying to learn, that's a fair motivation as well, as long as it is powerful enough to keep you going. I think it's a great motivation. The other thing is, if you feel discouraged to keep going, then you probably don't understand your motivation, or your motivation is not strong enough. So it's very hard for me to give advice in these situations, but I think that as long as you love your story, other people might as well. And using, how do you say, not using, like, uh, using this support or taking in this support to encourage yourself can also help you keep going. I'm not sure how to say, like, people can cheer on you, right? And you,
Yeah.
as long as you let people cheer on you, and if you love your story and they love your story, I think that's very motivating. But it changes from people to people, from person to person, excuse me. That changes from person to person. And some people might not think that an audience reacting to the story is enough if they don't have money.
Mm-hmm.
Some people may think that they only want money and don't care about people caring for their story. That is very subjective. My own motivation is my passion for my story and the encouragement from my audience.
Yeah. So,
And
oh,
of
keep
course, if
going.
you can earn something, if you can earn some money on the way, that's very appreciated because you won't starve. Yay!
Yeah. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to give it a like. It basically tells me and YouTube that you enjoy these interviews, and you want to keep hearing them. So,
Yay!
yeah, yeah.
Like.
Now we're going to talk about art. So,
Yay!
something I just picked a few areas of your art that I particularly enjoy. And we're going to start off with your ability to work with color. I really enjoy your color choices and your lighting and sort of how you create an atmosphere with them. So I was wondering if you could talk about that.
First, thank you. I'm very glad you enjoy my way of coloring. I my mom paints with oils, and she taught me like all the color theory that I know
Mm,
and how to deal with colors. I don't know if that's a concrete or a specific kind of study or art movement, but I enjoy soft um how do you call very soft colors. I think that it's the name for them. Pastel.
pastel. Yeah, yeah.
I really I enjoy pastel colors and saturated pastel colors, and I found that you can create volume with pastel and saturated colors, especially if you move around the source of light. So I really like to use backlight and to use different colors for the shading. Then again, for comics that need to be produced very fast and in a mass quantity, you need to optimize the process. So for most pages, I just use a very soft lilac for shading.
Mm,
Or better said, my best friend slash assistant uses a very pale lilac for shading. Sometimes though at the end I do add a little bit little touches of color to the main shading layer as to make it pop out a little bit. But it's usually colors is usually something that comes hard when you try to produce something really fast, like a comic, and you have to spit 50 panels a week. It's something that you have to plan very well beforehand so the end result doesn't look rushed.
mm,
To create atmosphere, I think that you have to again I sorry. I would recommend that you did mood boards or chose images of your liking to relate to certain scenes, to certain places, locations, or characters even, and try to emulate those colors that you see you like to to wait to make the scene and the scrolling sensation more uniform, to unify the colors. um Another thing I find is that when a character is feeling down or when they're being mysterious, you can easily transmit that feeling by adding some shadow. If
mm,
it's your antagonist in or a character that's not planning something good, you can just shade their whole face and make the light come from behind them while the protagonist is getting the light on their face, and you can see that the emotions are in a symbolic way clear to the view, illuminated and easy to see. So you can use lighting for characterization and for acting, and using that I think is very useful to give the scenes a little bit more depth, even if they wouldn't have it in a like natural context.
mm,
Playing with the light is very fun. Playing with the colors of the shadows and the lighting and even the backlight that sometimes would hit a character from behind would help give them a lot of volume. And you can standardize that process. You can study what you want to do, create a panel, and decide to repeat the same process for every panel that has the same mood or that is set in the same location or that is part of the same scene. And that way, I think you can use color to tell a story. And I really like doing that. Even though I think that now that I am restarting the series, I'm going to improve a lot on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I that I tried to do my best back when I didn't really think about it. But yes, color is great to tell stories.
Yeah. So, something I'd like to hear a little bit more about that you mentioned earlier is sometimes you'll go in and you'll add a little bit more color to panel than your standard process to make things pop.
Yeah.
What's like,
So,
yeah.
oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just
You
gonna say, what's your process? Like, are you coloring additionally on top of the flats? Are you shading on top of the shading? What are you doing?
okay? The process basically is I do the sketches or thumbs, then I do the lines, then I send them to my sister. She does the flat coloring, and then to my best friend who does the shading,
Mm,
basic shading with the color I tell them to. For example, for exteriors, it is usually a bluish lilac gray, pale gray. For interiors, it's different, a little bit more saturated color. It depends, and I usually decide what color I want the shades, and then I get the characters ready. And after I get the characters ready, ironically, I do the backgrounds. It shouldn't be this way. The backgrounds should be done first, mostly.
yeah, yeah.
But I, when I get the chance to change this process, I might modify it. But after I get the shading, the characters ready, I work on the backgrounds. Also, sometimes I already know what kind of shadows the scene will have. For example, when it's in the forest and it's kind of midday and the light will be going through the leaves of the trees, I already know that the shadow on the characters is going to be like little soft patches of light instead of hard shadows. And that way I can tell tell my best friend, my assistant, to do it. And they already know what I want to do. I send them references and it happens. And when I get them back, I just add the backgrounds. And for example, I would get a scene where this tree is a little bit too red, and I know that this character would look a little bit more red than it already is with the shadows. So I'll block in the shadow layer and add with a soft brush a little bit more of color, either red or if it's a green. It depends on the particular scene, on the particular thing that I want to achieve. Or I'll add an overlay layer on top of the characters in the background to color the whole panel a little bit more to make it pop.
Mm-hmm.
Or even I'll remove shadows entirely from a panel to have a comedic effect, or to clarify something, or to add drama or shock. So it's it's a process that's not that one last part of a process of deciding which scenes are going to pop up and why they're going to pop up is uh is not standardized. It's not something that I can explain as much as it is the intuition
Mm-hmm.
when I panels together. Sometimes the light is coming from above, and but for some reason I decide that I want a more dramatic lighting. So I change it afterwards into a more dramatic lighting to fit the mood of the panel more than the logical way the light behaves. And that's circling back to the use of light and color as storytelling devices. Okay, I think that's the process. I do thumbs, lines. I send them for flats and shading. I receive them back and do the backgrounds and modify shades, or add overlay layers for colors or glow layers for effects. And I also add the text when I add the lines. Text and lines are done like in the same in the same step, so I know where the text bubbles will be, and they don't get in the way of any character or any art.
Mm.
That's basically the process. And after that, I export and upload.
Yeah.
Show
So
it to the world.
share it to everyone.
Yeah.
So the next topic I wanted to talk about was your paneling.
Ooh,
So I had two questions regarding your paneling. I also like your paneling. I don't have a
thank you.
yeah. But so how do you typically judge how far apart to put your panels?
That was something that took me a long time, but I mostly read a lot of webtoons and ended up copying a lot of things. Like, okay, this panel goes like as far as this other one. It became ingrained in me how far a panel should go. Sometimes I spread them further apart
Mm-hmm.
after seeing that a scene needs a little bit more tension. But the rule of thumb is if you want an action to be perceived fast, place the panels close together. And if you want an action to be perceived as slow or to build tension, separate the panels. So you have to scroll to get to the next panel. So the reader will feel the adrenaline building up, the oh, what's going to happen. The brain will have time to wonder, to worry even before knowing what's going to happen. So the most nerve-wracking you want the theme to be, the most separated panels you should do.
Yeah.
And
That's a really interesting point that builds tension.
yeah, but also if you want a battle, don't separate the panels too much because you want it to feel like it's happening in a chaotic way, that everything's uh, overlaying, that the actions are overlaying themselves, like kick and punch and jump and dodge. It's if it, you have to scroll for the next action, it's like, what, this battle's taking forever, you have them close together. It's like, oh, and you feel the speed and how the characters have to react in the moment. The idea of paneling is to make you part of the scene, same as with storyboarding. The
Mm.
faster that the camera shifts angles, uh, the faster that the scene is perceived.
My next question was it had to do with the types of panels you use basically. So how do
Mhm.
you decide when to just use a normal like rectangular panel versus a more slanted diagonal panel versus the cool like fade in and fade out effect that sometimes people use?
Sorry. Okay, that's fun to study and to decide. The rule of thumb I follow is if the scene is stable, the panel is stable.
Mm.
For example, there's a scene where two characters are talking and nobody's screaming, they're just talking. This scene is a scene where I would try to use very square like panels because we don't want the reader to focus on any stability or any anomaly. The moment to use different panels is when you want to emphasize something that's different or something that's fast. Um, I use diagonal panels to to make movement more evident. So if someone's going for a kick or a punch or falling or there's an explosion, you I try to use a panel that is not stable. It also gives you that sense of speed of something that's not let me close, sorry, they were calling me and I sorry,
Oh, take your
but
time.
oh no, I'm so sorry. Yeah, using diagonal panels gives the reader a sense of speed and a sense of disstability, how do you call that, instability.
Maybe. I'm having trouble remembering the word myself.
But yeah, you feel unbalanced. For example, if there's a scene where two characters are talking, but one of them is feeling emotionally distressed and things are not working out for them, maybe they are they're in the middle of an argument and they're not getting the point across or they're getting humiliated. I try to make the panels express that same feeling,
Mm,
maybe skewing it a little bit or tilting the square so it becomes like a square that's like not right, and making it small so the character feels trapped. And when I want a scene to be more open and calm, I open up the panel so the characters have space to breathe. I try to do that. Sometimes it's not needed. Sometimes you just can do it with square panels and it doesn't hurt the story or the characters. But when I can do these little things of transferring the storytelling also to the way of presenting the art, I try to do it. I think it helps bring my points across. Also, about the fade panels. The fade panels, I try to use them sparingly because they often transmit a small passage of time. Like there was something going on and it slowly changed into something else.
mm,
That was with a gradient, with a fade to, or a fade to black, or a fade to white. And yeah, those I try to use sparingly. Fading in and fading out is I use it to change scene, to show the passage of time, and in general to give the reader a, a breath, like a space to change, to analyze what just happened, and to like change the gear setting to keep reading a different thing or to take in a different large amount of information. Also for presentations, as an introduction of characters, I I like to use the long panels and the fade-ins and fade-outs,
mm.
so the reader has time to process the information, the new information that's coming in. Um, or how do you? It's usually whenever you're going to introduce something and you want to give certain importance to it, that you give it space, both physical space and mental space for the person to process it, to think, oh, this is important. This character is important, or this particular action is important. So I will give it space for it to be processed. That's for the fade ins and fade outs, other than the flashbacks and the change of scenes, mostly. There are other things like panels that have no borders and are just characters without background, that are used for more comedic effect or for adding in comments that are not that relevant, but it's good to know them. Like little
Mm.
annotation, like the little chibi character at the end of the page. I didn't mean that. It's very comedic. And whenever you judge that dialogue is still needed, but not very important, you can add little characters at the end,
Mm.
like commenting on something without a panel necessarily and without a background, even without shading. Those are very useful to like give a little bit of flavor to the story without needing to use flamboyant, very elaborate panels every time.
Now we're moving on to talking about composition and cinematography.
Ooh.
Something I really enjoyed about reading your comic and just absorbing your work in general is you have a really amazing sense of what shot choices to use and where to place the characters on the page. And also deciding just like in general, like what camera angles to use. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, most of it comes from my background on storyboarding because I had to learn a lot about how to use the camera to express exactly what I wanted to show. For
Mm,
example, you don't usually use a camera that's far away to express a very emotional scene because you want to be close to the characters so the reader or the audience feels what they're feeling. So what you have to think about when choosing where to place the camera is that imagine sometimes it's very real. Imagine that every panel has to show you something important or at least worthy. Do you need that panel? You have to say, yeah, I do need that panel. And then ask yourself, why do you need that panel? Okay, I need this panel to show that my character is uncomfortable. Then you ask yourself, is being uncomfortable a feeling you see from afar or a feeling you see from close by? So now you know that you have to place the camera closer to the character. So you place the camera closer to the character. Do you want to show that your character is uncomfortable by how they look or by how they fidget with their hands or just by how they like they move their feet? How do you want your character to show that they're uncomfortable? And
mm,
that's where you place the camera. Another example, you want this camera to show a new location that your audience has never seen before. So in this case, you have to place the camera somewhere you can see the whole location or a big part of the location from. And that way you don't have to, for example, use different shots to show the same place. I think that's very useful too. For example, you're in a new place and the character just arrived there. And first you show the surprise face of the character to show that this is a new place and that it wasn't expected. Then you show different shots, close-ups of different things in the place, a notebook, then a lamp, and then a dinosaur toy. And then you show the whole location. That builds up tension. um and that way, like asking yourself, why do I want this scene? What do I want to show with this scene? Do I need this scene? And what is the important thing to show in this scene? What is the focus that I want to give it? Is what will answer where to I'm sorry, is what will answer where to place your camera and what kind of lens or angle or shot to use. It's not something that it's not something easy because then you would have to think very hard about every panel. But I think that after a while it becomes more natural and more automatic, and you don't have to think about it that much. But yeah, think, where's your character looking? Do you want your character to look small? So place your camera upwards. Do you want your character to look powerful, big, and confident? Then place it below their eye line. Little things that apply to most cinematography, not only in comic production but in shows. So you can also watch and study a lot of shows.
mm. So that sort of starts to touch my next question is for people who want to improve their compositions or their cinematography, how would you recommend going about that or studying?
Um, well then, I, I'm very self-taught, but there is a very good course on schoolism, and there are very good videos on YouTube about storyboarding and about comic production and how to decide how to show a scene. I will recommend Walter Osley again. he's he's taken lot of time and effort to produce very useful videos about how to use perspective effectively. And with perspective, I also mean camera. But how to study it, I think I think you can learn a lot from watching tutorials on storyboarding and on storytelling.
Mm.
Before my comic, I planned it as a book. And I watched a lot of videos on writing, on how to write, how not to write, how to show that a character feels this way or acts this way without telling you. The show not tell rule. Um, and I think that helped a lot. I think that comic production is a very complex skill that is made of many sub skills, and you should not focus on a single one. There are many things that you can learn from writing, from animation, from filming or filmmaking. There are so many things you can learn from many, many, many areas of art. And I don't know if you can improve by just watching as or like focusing on a single one. So it's a process. And the first thing you need to do is be aware that you want to improve your camera angles, right? And then you look up for videos about camera angles and
Mm.
about the 180 rule, not to move your camera between your characters, to keep it always on one side of them so you don't confuse the audience. And that's a rule that applies mostly to filmmaking, but also to making comics, so the audience can feel like they are on a sorry on a particular place and not moving around the room with the characters, so it feels like more here, more real, and more grounded. How to improve? Know what you want to improve on and Google it.
Yeah, yeah. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about a little was working with 2D backgrounds, because you in the canvas version of your comic, at least, you drew a lot of your backgrounds by hand,
Yeah.
and I really enjoy your backgrounds. So I was wondering, how do you produce these backgrounds in a way that is actually sustainable and you could keep doing it while keeping up your pace working on your comic?
Wow. Uh, I've tried to learn. Sorry. I, I'm so sorry. Recently, I've tried to learn how to use SketchUp, and although I have understood um, the basic functions of the program, I don't think I'll use it for backgrounds anytime soon.
Mm.
I like drawing my backgrounds myself. It gives me more freedom with the camera, with the angles. It allows me to use more curved lines whenever I want to do like a fish eye shot. How to do that in a sustainable way is arguable, depending on what you consider sustainable. What I did is I studied perspective for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
This pre-comic, it was back when I was studying, when I was working in the animation industry, because I also worked as a background artist. So I had to learn a lot about perspective. In my case, I feel more comfortable doing uh, like freehand backgrounds than I do of taking pictures of 3D models. But that's me. I understand that for many people, for most people, it is way easier to work with 3D backgrounds, and that such a thing, uh, how do you say that? Releases a lot of workload of their hands.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
by all means, use them if you know how to use them effectively. I, for one, don't know how to. And even though I've tried to learn, I think that I am more productive drawing them myself. But that is just me. For most people, please do it. Please love yourself a little bit.
Yeah,
Work with 3D backgrounds. Make your life as easy as you can. Bring as less stress into your life as you can, especially when you decide to get into an industry that's so demanding of time, of effort, and of production quality. 3D backgrounds rule. I just have no idea how to use them.
yeah. I think something too that I noticed in the canvas version of your comic that might make drawing backgrounds make a little bit more sense is in at least the canvas version of your comic, you did a lot of traveling and showing different places. If you're doing new places, it's usually actually easier to draw them because the 3D backgrounds are only more time efficient when you plan on using the place again and again.
Yep, exactly. And most of my comic and my story develops in a very natural setting where perspective doesn't have to be so stiff. There are not many buildings, and the buildings that there are appear for very short episodes,
Mm.
usually. For a very few episodes. I'm sorry, for a very few episodes. So it's usually, I think it's more efficient for me to draw the backgrounds for the little time they appear instead of yeah, dedicating days to building up a model that I won't ever use again.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but yes.
Another thing I wanted to talk about too is I noticed in the Canvas version that you do a really excellent job when they change locations to pick colors that really make your setting feel like it's from another world. How do you recommend doing that?
Okay, thank you. Um, I think I do it myself. I don't know if I can recommend it, but I do it first by deciding what part of the world they're in. Most of my backgrounds are natural, so I wonder what is this part of the world like? Does this part have more of these elements, these life forms? And I think of the trees and the rocks and the environment as something that would make sense the with the area of the zone of the world that we're in. And as to picking otherworldly colors, I would recommend going with a mood board. I did
Mm.
not canvas version, but I'm trying to use mood boards now. But for the canvas version, I was like, okay, so let's make this area look more orange. How will the trees look in this area? How will the animals or the rocks? What color will the rocks be? What color is the soil? Is it brown? Because I don't want it to be also jarring, like so completely fantastical it makes no sense. So the ground in my world is usually a dull purple that looks kind of like it could be brown, but not quite.
Mm.
So for building otherworldly color schemes, I would mostly go with picking a color that looks kind of natural and then shifting it a little bit to make it a little bit to make it sort of uncanny, but not so much that your eyes bleed. I mean, neon trees would be cool, but do I want to draw neon trees and to see completely neon trees all the time while in this world, or would that give me a headache? So I instead go with teal colored trees. And they're not entirely green and they're not entirely blue. They're not so weird as to take me away from the story and think, wow, how can a tree like this exist? It's just like, oh, look, a weird tree. And you keep going. And it's So it becomes part of the environment that you can keep constructing in your head, and I don't need to draw it every time. Like, I know that the trees in here are kind of bluish, and I know that the trees in here are kind of orangish, and orange trees are actually normal in like on Earth. But knowing that all trees in this area are orange helps you locate the characters in a certain area or zone or yeah, part of the world. So
Mm.
pick kind of normal colors, but mix them a bit weird or shift them a little bit for otherworldly colors, I think. Don't hurt your audience's eyes.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing I noticed is you do a really good job deciding when to use solid colors or gradients as backgrounds, and also deciding what colors to actually use. So I was wondering if you could discuss that a little.
Yeah. Uh, when I need the focus to be the character, I honestly don't need to draw the background. It's the thing that I was telling you before. I already build in your mind that the background in this place is composed of bluish trees. So I don't need
Mm.
to show them every time. And that applies to most comics and most stages, to put it in a word. As long as you know what kind of colors there are in the background, I can blur them or become or make them become gradients without much of a loss of experience when I decide to focus on a character. The other thing is when I want to show a strong emotion, I will
Mm-hmm.
use a color that's associated with that emotion, or maybe a stereotypical color and or background that's associated with it. For example, surprise. You see a lot in manga comics that when a character is surprised or like shocked, the character is in a flat color, the background's black, and the background also has like a lightning going to their head or something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the trope. That is a symbol, and that is a device of showing in a language that the audience already understands that this character is shocked in a humorous way. So yeah, it's asking yourself, is this emotion memeable? And if it is there a meme, as in a memetic construction that I can use to show it? And the lightning in the black background is a mimetic construction, as in a memory or a trope that's already ingrained in the minds of the readers. So I don't need to explain it to them.
Mm.
And yeah, when I can use that, I will use that. For example, the background that's red and has like yellow and orange star sort of explosion like lines to show anger or someone that's upset. I don't need to explain that to anyone. Everyone already knows that red and yellow and orange are interpreted as an explosive emotion. So I find that sometimes using gradients, solid colors, or tropes helps me communicate the same idea with less resources, less time consumptions, and less stress.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's when the focus is the character, and they're not interacting with anything in the background.
Mm. The last topic I wanted to talk about that has to do directly with art is working on action scenes, because there were a lot of action scenes in the Canvas version of your comic that I remember were pretty impactful. Do you have any advice for creating action scenes?
Read a lot of action scenes. Read comics that have action scenes and understand why they work. There's a thing that I don't feel very confident about my action scenes. I'm trying to improve on that. But there's a thing that's very interesting is that an action scene should have both a physical component and a psychological component, as in
Mm.
the character is fighting both something physical and something psychological within themselves. Usually it's like, I need to be brave and I need to dare do this. And we have to see that it's not only about the punching and the kicking and the throwing of some powers or magic or whatever. It's also about the character growing, because this is a hard situation, a complex moment that the character needs to decide what to do. If the character already knows what to do, it becomes sort of boring, at least in the type of story that I'm telling. You may have characters who are very powerful and don't need to think about their fights, but as the physical thing, but maybe they have like internal conflicts to resolve.
Mm.
So if you want a battle or an action scene to be impactful, you should add not only the physical conflict, but also an emotional or psychological conflict. So you get invested in the character. About drawing them, it's again uh, studying dynamic poses, studying how bodies react, and how to stretch the poses to make the action more impactful than it would be in real life. Like, you punch someone's face and the face will kind of turn, but in an in an action scene you can draw the character like their whole body is twisting around like it like it would uh, give a couple of twists before hitting the ground, and you can exaggerate movements like in animation, the exaggeration of poses. That's also a thing you can study to make everything more impactful, to stretch the poses a bit more than they would if they were natural.
Mm.
But yeah, read a lot.
Now we're moving on to our advice section, which I have also been pretty excited about. So, do you have any general tips for speeding up your workflow?
Yes, I do have a general. Do have general tips for speeding up your workflow. Your workflow. Do you want to become fast at drawing? Do a comic. You will have to become fast. You will have to become fast. There are thing that's finished, not perfect. You can't be a perfectionist when working on a comic because you will never post it. You will never share it because it will never be perfect in your eyes, or like in many very perfectionist artists' eyes, I think. I think a lot of the art community wants to be able to draw so well before telling their stories, and that's only costing them time.
Mm.
I mean, of course, you can wait until you feel confident enough to do it, but your story won't be judged solely with your art, like on your art, but also on your passion. And the skills that you need to acquire won't come to you just, and you won't learn them by osmosis just looking at comics. You will have to try and fail and understand where you failed and try again. That's the way that most people learn, you know. Another tip for speeding up your workflow that's a little bit more applicable is standardized processes. Do you like know yourself? Do you work faster if you do a single page fully from thumbs to colors, or do you work faster if you do all thumbs, then all lines, then all colors?
Mm.
I think for a lot of people, it's faster if they don't switch the process. As in, I, for example, do all the thumbs first because it's with the same tool, because it's with the same line of thought or like mental process. I have to translate my script, my reading script, into images that are like more or less understandable to myself. Then I go for lining. And the lining is another whole process that's very different to thumbnailing. I only have to see my thumbnails and decipher what I wanted to happen there, and then draw lines over it. And after that, I don't do the flatting anymore, but it would have been it's more convenient to just flat all the pages and then
Yeah.
start with, because then again there are different mental functions to say something. And at least for me, it is easier to concentrate on a specific function instead of changing around and shifting around and maybe losing focus and like, okay, I finished the page. Oh, I'm gonna go get some coffee. And I forget and I just sit and watch something on YouTube. And then I just did one page in one day. But when I do thumbnails, I can do all my thumbnails in a single day. And my lines can be ready in 3 days or so, or four, instead of like doing a page a day. Because
Mm.
I'm not changing around, I'm just focused on a single process. And I'm not thinking like, I have to finish this particular page, because it's not such a tasking um a, how do you say that? It's not an achievement you're going for. It's just the process. You're like, I have to finish this page and it has to look exactly like I want it to look. It's just, okay, I did these lines. I'm moving on to the next page because I'm already on fire.
Mm.
I'm already fired up. I already know how this goes. And you don't have to stop and sit back and think, wow, I liked this page, or wow, I hated how this turned out. It doesn't matter right now. That's not part of the process.
Mm.
Your process is not to think critically of pages as final products, but to keep going, keep going, keep going. And at the end, you may want to correct some things and to fix them, and that's all right too. But you've already been finished, and you can already take it uh, more easily. Like you can be kinder to yourself in the end, and not examine every page as a final product, but the whole episode as a final product. And I think that helps a lot when when fighting the perfectionism and when actually finishing an episode.
Next, I wanted to ask about just general writing advice.
Cool. As I told you, I watched a lot of writing advice videos on YouTube when I wanted to make this a book, a novel. So, as general advice, I don't think I can summarize it all, but you can. How do you say that? Because the writing in a comic is a very complex thing to see, actually, because It happens behind the scenes, and you don't often see scripts of artists. You don't know how they work, so you're blind. It's a very, very secretive process. It happens behind closed doors.
Mm.
Mm, how to write it? It depends on you. It depends on how you're comfortable, but you can summarize it in let's call it 4 different steps, right? And these are very loose, and you can or can't follow them. You're allowed to follow them or not follow them, and it doesn't really change the end result. 4 processes I'm thinking about are the summary of your story, the outline of your story, the beat of your story, and the script of the episodes.
Mm.
How how do we define these all? First of all, you need a summary of your story. The summary can be as long or as short as you wish, but it's basically this character encounters this situation, they go through this, and this adventure. At the end, they learn this and they go back home. That's basic hero's journey. So as long as you can take your story and tell it very briefly, you don't need to elaborate on anything. That is, if you want to write your whole story, you don't have to. You can make your story as you go, as most artists in the manga community do, because they don't know when it's going to end or get
Yeah, yeah.
canceled. But if you want to be like super technical, you want to have a little bit of your story. You don't have to have the ending, but you have to have like a little summary. Like, what is this about? What will happen in this world? What will happen to these characters? Then you go to the outline. The outline is a more uh, advanced and developed summary. You describe the characters, describe the scenes that you want to outline. You can outline your whole story, you can outline a season, you can outline an arc, uh, you can outline whatever you want. The outline is very simple. Again, it is character A who lives here, does that, and has these friends, finds this device that does this and has that, and they decide to make a cake with this device.
Mm.
But the cake turns into a bird, and the bird is a god, and it tells them that they need to go into an adventure. It's a little bit more detailed, with more of the world building ingrained to it, and it is aimed to, that's the one you don't show to your audience because you'll spoil them. That's the one. The summary is more general. Maybe you can read a summary of a story, like the summary on the back of a book, and you you don't know what's going to happen really. But on the outline, that's that's the one where you start seeing a lot of spoilers
Mm.
and writing them and deciding what part of which scene is going to go better first or later, or if this will happen to X character or Y character. And after that, after you like your outline, where your story is going or where your season is going, you've written like a couple of adventures, you do what's called the beats, the episode beats. That means you take a Word document and you write episode 1. And in episode 1, you write the important things that are going to happen. Character A decides to bake a cake. Character B joins character A, but they are not good friends. They still decide to bake the cake. At the end of the episode, the cake turns into a bird. I'm sorry, I just made that up. I'm so sorry. What the heck am I talking about? But that's, that's the idea. And then you go episode 2. It starts with the bird telling them that they are the chosen cake people, right?
Mm. Of
And that's
course.
you go with the things like now thinking of the story as webtoon episodes or comic episodes or whatever you want to apply your advice to.
Mm.
You think of the beats as the summaries of the episodes. And after that, you take every beat. I mean, you can modify, edit, and the best part to edit things is like the step before. And then you, before going into the beats, you need to be happy with the outline. Before going to the script, you need to be happy with the beats. When you finish doing the beats, you take every beat and try to turn it into a scripted episode. And then, for example, I do it by panels. I don't write panel 1, panel 2. I just write like in every line I tried for it to be a panel.
Mm.
Like general shot of the environment. Then second panel would be shot of the main character from behind. Then dialogue. My name is A. Right? You sort of get the idea. Then shot of A's face. And I love baking cakes. And you start writing the dialogue. And that way you more or less will know how many panels you will have in each episode, and you will be able to manage when you want the episode to end, how do you want the cliffhangers to play, and so on and so forth.
Mm.
And after that, you start with the thumbnails. That is my writing process. It may not work for everyone. I don't think everyone needs to follow every step. I just know that I find that process healthy because whenever I don't like something, I can change it before having built the whole story around it,
Yeah,
before
yeah.
having written the full script around an episode. And then I realized, no, I really wanted this to happen in the second episode, not the first one. Oops, whoops. And then I just start over. It's easier when you already structure things in a broader sense. I don't think it's easy, but I think it is it is a more convenient for your workflow.
Mm. Now I wanted to ask if you have some advice for world building.
The advice for world building, I think, is dang it, have fun, imagine it, spend some time with these people, this world, these cultures. Try to live there in a way. And if you're not big on like daydreaming or imagining, open a document and answer some simple questions.
Mm,
What is this world's climate? Are there cultures in there? Does this world have, I'm talking about planets, but you can apply this to cities or to anything. Like, does this world have many moons or just one moon? How does it change how they measure time? How long are the days or the nights in this world? Mm, Then, how do the creatures look? How is the weather? Do these creatures adapt to the weather, or are they like new creatures who came from a different weather and are now uh, wearing a very uh, coated outfit to protect themselves from a desert?
mm,
You can ask many things like, how has this shaped the religion in this world, or the culture, or how are communities? Are they big cities? Are they small families? um, how do these people or creatures have offspring? Is it that they adopt one another? Do they live for a long time? It's this question's a little bit too otherworldly, but I think you can more or less apply them to building a culture, not necessarily a whole different planet. Like,
mm.
what's the most important in this culture? What is the most valued, for example, virtue? Uh, would these people prefer to be honorable, or prefer to be empathetic, or it is, I don't know, but you can, I think there are places where you can find specific questions for world building. And yeah, you got to think about the things that can be different from our, let's say, world or culture or time. Why are they different?
Mm.
Yeah, like, how does magic influence technology or timekeeping, or or like traveling? Are there different uh vehicles just because there is magic, or because the people have powers? There, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of asking you some questions, and if you don't have the time or will to stay in your head answering them, maybe just write them down.
Mm.
Write them down and have them visible, so whenever you're thinking your story, you're like, oh right, I wrote that their months are not 30 days but 60 days. So this character can say like, oh, it took 2 months, and now months are not called months. And you can add a little bit of fantastical added things that will make the people, the readers, know that they are not in their world, that there's something different, that there's something foreign, but still it's similar enough for them to feel like they can relate.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely reminds me of something called like I used to watch a lot of Fang Zhu videos when I was in high school and in college, and he brought up something called like the 80% rule in design. And he was talking about even when you're designing alien worlds, you want 80% to be normal or the same, and 20% to be fantastical? Or it just
Yes,
gets hard for people to keep track of, you know?
yes, that's what I was talking about, the otherworldly colors. Like, make them normal, but not quite.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes so much sense.
How do you keep yourself focused?
Focus is a myth. I don't know. I have no idea. I think passion keeps me going, but I do go through moments of days where I can't focus and then days where I hyper focus and I work and work and work and it makes me very happy to work and then I kind of burn out and stop working altogether for 3 days and
Mm.
forget and maybe I can try and focus and I can't. I think I that's hard. That is very hard to keep myself focused and I guess having a schedule can help. Like forcing yourself to follow a routine can help you get your body and mind used to doing something similar every day.
Mm.
And that way, eventually, after sticking to that routine for a bit, for a while maybe, I think focus can come naturally. For example, uh, when I worked like a 5 to 9 work job, I would the very fact that I had a schedule and I had scheduled breaks would make me focus easier.
Mm.
But now that I am working as a comic creator and I can control my own schedule, it's been very hard. I just need to to apply myself to get a schedule and to follow it. And I think that's what um, most people could do if they have the ability, the time, is to get a schedule, to get working hours, and to force yourself to take breaks, even if you can keep going. If you hit a break hour,
Mm.
it's not like, oh yeah, like I do, like, oh yeah, I'm working, I've been working all day, I can keep going because you'll get burned out. Even if you're not tired that day, the next day you may be tired, your mind may be that it may turn off, and then you'll pay for asking too much from yourself the day before. So a schedule, both for working and for leisure. So you can have breaks for your brain.
Mm.
It's really hard.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I totally feel like now that I've been doing this for a while and I can sort of sense trends in myself, I've totally experienced the thing of like, yeah, I'll just keep pushing a little bit harder and then it
Yeah.
adds up. And whenever you stop, you are going to have to pay the price.
Yep. Very true.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't even notice. Like, I was pushing myself very hard for a couple months with YouTube to the point where, like, I didn't notice I was tired all the time. People would ask me, hey, how are you doing? And I'm just like, oh, I'm
Tired.
tired. And then the moment I went on hiatus, I was just like, oh my gosh, I am exhausted. No matter how much of a break I take, I am just tired.
Yep. I've been there.
Yeah, it certainly builds up.
Yep, it does. So please don't let it build up. If you're
Yeah.
listening to this, you may think that uh, you have more energy than I do or than Rishala does. You may think you can keep up, and you know what? Maybe you can, but chances are that you will get burned out, and you won't. I'd rather have a steady flow of energy than bursts and then nothing, and then valleys of despair and unproductivity
Mm.
for whole days. So yeah, don't burn yourself out, especially when you kind of find yourself sighing and thinking, "Oh, I'm so tired." That's burnout. That's not that you didn't sleep well. No, man, that's burnout. Watch out for it. It's not healthy.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So, what would you tell yourself if you had to start over again from scratch?
Go for it. Go for it. Just stand up and go. Start. There are many things uh, that can be improved, but unless you keep going, you won't notice them. If you're telling me, for example, if my accounts all get deleted and nobody knows who I am and nobody recognizes my art, like I've been deleted from the memory of everyone, and I just have to start over and
Hmm.
build everything from scratch. I I think the first thing I'll tell myself is update weekly, not bi-weekly, even if they're shorter episodes, because Webtoon doesn't notice bi-weekly as much as it notices weekly. That's, I think, the most important thing I would tell myself. Because everything else you can improve. There will never be a perfect story, a perfect panel, a perfect episode. There's not like, it's not like I would like for myself to become better as a requirement to be successful if I start over. I just think that many of these depends on how well you know the platforms you're working with and how much you can profit from this knowledge. The Webtoon weekly update system is very useful, and I found out about it very late. Like just just as I was preparing to become an original.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more about the algorithm. I don't know if I made mistakes that I could change. Maybe I did. I'm not sure if, let me see. Of course, I have improved art-wise and storytelling-wise. But those are things that I don't think I could have learned if I got told about them. You have
Mm.
to learn them yourself. Like, separate your panels more. No, man, it doesn't matter if I tell you that. That's not something that will define the success of your story. Like, use bigger fonts. That's, yeah, that would be a good idea. That'd be a good idea. But I think I I noticed that very early on. But it's mostly like research the platform you're posting to. I know that you're just having fun, but this can become your source of income
Mm.
if you know how to play your cards. But even if you know how to play them, you cannot trust that the system will work for you. You cannot trust that you will be noticed by this huge company, huge entertainment company. You cannot make your goal to be noticed by them, but to enjoy the process of creating as long as you enjoy it. If you stop enjoying this, stop doing it. For myself, I can assure you I won't stop enjoying producing comics anytime soon. And I wouldn't have stopped even if I hadn't become an original, at least in a long time, because I really want to tell this story. But yes, it's, I think, nothing that I could tell myself would be truly useful to starting from scratch.
Mm.
Maybe they promote yourself more on social media. Maybe I would try to say that. But it's, I think I would go more with a enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
New ride, enjoy it. That's what I would have told myself if I had the chance to talk to myself when I was starting. Like, don't worry, don't stress. Maybe they'll notice you, maybe they won't. Just have fun. Don't let this become a source of stress. Nobody is asking anything from you, and you don't know anything to anyone. So just have fun. Take breaks when you need to take breaks and enjoy the ride.
Yeah. I'm nodding really hard. I like that.
I'm glad.
So, this sort of goes along a bit with part of your answer for the previous question, but if you can answer it, what
It's
helped
okay.
you improve the most while making a comic?
Well, first, making the comic. Second, um, reading other comics, identifying panels that I really enjoyed. For
Mm,
example, one of the first comics I read on on Webtoon was Refund High School. I really enjoyed it. It was a very slice of life comic that had episodes divided in like mini episodes inside. And it was very cute, very comedic, and very calm. And I really like the simple style. Sometimes they would use super long panels to
mm,
show whole scenes or chase scenes. And I also noticed in an ordinary that I didn't read right away, but I read after I like a while after I started posting because people said like, "Oh, your comic reminds me of an ordinary," and I was like, "What is this?" And I read it, and I really love Uru-chan's use of long panels to show a continuous action.
mm,
So I would take those little things that I enjoyed seeing in other comics and try to apply them to mine. Not all that consciously, like, okay, this episode I'm going to use this scene. But more like, more like, okay, this is a chase scene. How do I, uh, how do I make a chase scene look interesting? Oh, wait, I can use a long panel and draw the character in this position, then in this other one, and then all the way to the bottom in the position that I want the main panel to be in.
mm,
And I use the scroll format to create a sense of movement. Not as much as, oh, I want to copy this panel or I want to uh, do exactly the same scene. But as I read a lot and I think I built my visual library based on the things that I really liked about the comics that I read. And of course, it's hard and you will often forget many things that you like. And that's why I don't think it's, I think it's good to keep reading and to keep enjoying. This is what you're producing. You're telling a story. And although I don't believe that you need to read a lot to tell a good story, I think it helps, especially when you don't know the media very well, the medium, the medium very well.
yeah, yeah.
So you, by reading, by consuming this content, you will also learn what you like, and you will find your own language of storytelling. And that's very satisfying too. You will decide when to use these kinds of panel that you saw this person use, and you will see like, no, I don't like how this person did this panel. And if you ever like draw a panel that looks like that, you may go like, wait, I didn't like this. Oh, of course I saw it and it didn't work. Maybe you can go even deeper and think, why didn't it work? Why didn't it feel right? And by finding those things that you don't like, you will find the things that do work and you do like. So how to improve at making a comic is make a comic and identify the things that you like in the other comics that you read.
Mm. So, I can't believe it, but it's time for our last question.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah. This has been such a good interview. but any advice for creators who might want to be an original?
Well, if I knew how the system worked, I'd tell you. But advice for creators who want to become an original: love your story. First is really love your story. Love your characters. You don't want to be stuck with a story and characters that you don't like. You want to keep going, not quit in the middle of it, and not get bored. Second, art and writing wise, it would be the canvas, the default canvas advice of place your hook in the first three episodes.
Mm.
Make the interesting part of your story evident by episode 3 or by episode 2. That's even better. If you do that, people will be more likely to subscribe to your series. You remember, you have 2 episodes to make your series be interesting to the reader and for the reader to be able to perceive the general mood of your story. Because if you start a story that looks like romance and in the first 3 episodes just cute, sweet, pink stuff that like feels fuzzy inside, but then the fourth episode it becomes I don't know, horror, thriller, action, and I mean, I am all for those kinds of stories, but usually when readers subscribe to a series or see the first episodes, they already have an idea of what to expect. Think of Madoka, Madoka Magica.
Yes.
It has a very pinkish feel to it, but you can feel it is eerie and it is weird from the first 2 episodes. Then the third episode hits and it's like, oh, I'm in for a ride. But it was not like deceiving you other than the opening. The opening is very deceiving, but
Yeah, yeah.
it adds to the eerie, out of place, uncanny feeling of the series. So you want the audience to get the feel of the series from the first episodes. You don't have to spoil anything or you don't have to force anything to happen as long as the mood is perceivable from the start or like from the first 2 episodes. You can start a series very happily and then shift. It's like my canvas story. It starts in a setting and in a way and then it changes.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I think the interesting thing to note here that you sort of talked about was actually the you used the word interesting, showing what's interesting about your stories in the first 3 episodes. I
Yeah.
just wanted to point that out because that really stood out to me.
Yeah, like why should I keep reading it?
Mm.
Why am I interested in this? And that can be like, I'm interested in the character, or I'm interested in this event that happened or will happen, or I'm told it can't happen, or just the world. I am interested in this world. As long as you can know where the focus of your story is and you can sell it or try to sell it to the audience in those first episodes, I think you're good. Uh, Creators who want to become an original, try to post often so Webtoon Senpai notices you. And with that, I mean the cast team who can promote you and help you grow. That also helps. Uh, if you have a big ish audience, it's more likely that, I mean, what Webtoon should want, I guess, is financial benefit. And if your
Mm.
story bring a lot of readers to the table, they want that. They want things that the audiences consume. So I mean, if they see a series that has a lot of subscribers or readers, they may be more likely to contact them. For example, the contests on Webtoon, the Canvas Awards, remember, were um, a voting event. The audience voted for their favorite series. it was not something that was qualified by story or by art. It was by popularity, because popularity is what Webtoon is after. They want people to consume what they produce. They
Mm.
want juicy ad revenue. So if you maximize your chances of being noticed by the Canvas squad, the Canvas team, you will get more views, you will get more readers, and you will become more popular. And I think I don't think that's the only reason you're picked, but I do think that's a very important reason why you are.
Mm.
If if you're a hidden, obscure thing, no matter if your art is gorgeous and your writing is phenomenal, if people don't read your series, why would they publish it? They would only lose money with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not like try to be commercial, but try to post often so the Canvas team notices you. Yeah, the other thing is enjoy, try to be authentic. It's not about creating the most popular um, and trope heavy product. You
Mm-hmm.
can you can totally do it and you may be successful, but uh, I think that most people here are solo artists or who have a very small team. So try to be happy while doing it so you keep yourself motivated, because this may not happen for a long time. Make
Mm.
sure that you like what you're doing enough that it shows. Because when people see that you like what you're doing, that you're putting love and effort into it, they're more likely to be invested in it. So post weekly, love your work, and be patient.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
also, don't go redo your story every 2 months. That only hurts you. It makes your audience tired. Let all art be there. All art is fine, and it's fun to see the improvement. As a reader, I like it.
I think that's it, actually. Why don't we wrap
Wow.
things up unless there's anything else you want to add?
Thank you for having me. This
Oh.
was really fun. This was really fun. I think there's not a thing like a road to originals. It's just a road to telling your story. And if someone else believes in it enough to want to publish it and pay for you, that's incredible. But that's not something that's going to happen to every one of us.
Mm.
And it should not become your goal and your sole purpose in life. I mean, of course, you can be doing it for the fame or for the money, but I think it's more important that you are happy while doing what you do, or you will burn out, or you'll get super tired and you won't want to see it anymore. Or worse, you will grow resentful towards Webtoon or towards whatever publishing platform you're aiming for, because they don't notice you no matter how hard you try. So don't expect so I mean, don't define success by the fact that you are published by an agency or not, but by your own terms. Find those terms and learn those terms and maybe accept them. And maybe you will only believe that you're successful if you're published, but maybe you won't. And that's a self-discovery travel, a self-discovery trip.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
on you. And good luck. You can be happy doing what you want to do. And you can also not starve, by the way. There are many things and many ways, like Patreon and coffee, and ways that you can find ways to support yourself. So that depends on you again. And good luck. Sometimes you won't need it, but most times you will.
Yeah, yeah. I want to thank you again so much for coming on and sharing this with everyone. I had a great time when we were talking on Webtoon Tea, so I really wanted to take the chance to get to know about you a little more. So thanks.
No, thank you for having me. It was really fun. I don't know if my experience can help anyone, but if there's a chance, uh, I'll try.
Yeah, yeah. So do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Oh, sure. I'm Leaglem, Leaglem, on most platforms, as in Twitter and Instagram. Also on Webtoon, and my comic is called The Last Dimension, but it's coming soon to Originals, so you might want to sit tight and wait for it. And see you on our front page.
Yeah, yeah. Let's all be Canvas Squad together.
Yeah.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks for listening. Don't
Thank
forget to
you.
subscribe.